Hey, welcome back to the Advisor's Compass. I'm Chuck Downs. I'm here with Andy Schwartz, and each month we talk about growth, scale, and clarity around wealth management practices. So, if you're an advisor and you want to grow faster, scale smarter, and build what lasts, you're in the right place. Andy, episode 10, and I guess this is T-shirt episode, right?
Well, today's a very special day. At one point, we have our annual kickball barbecue. So we have a kickball game this afternoon, and then we barbecue. Phil Roberts, one of my partners, is literally a master barbecuer, and so I don't know if you can see my shirt, but I'm on Phil's pit crew because I'm too old to play kickball, so I help cook. And yeah, so it's a big day, and looks like the weather is threatening this morning, but it's supposed to clear up. So we're very excited about. And I want to say it's like our 5th or 6th annual. So yeah, really
Nice.
excited about today.
Nice. Well, maybe we carve off some barbecue, put it on the side, put it in a FedEx, and ship it to me.
Yeah, maybe I'll see if I can do that, Chuck.
I would
I'll see
love
if I
that,
can-
Andy. Hey, we had a one of our group coaching sessions a couple of weeks ago, and one of the guys asked a question just around your demeanor and how you view your role. And you talked a lot around gratitude and humility. I'd love to just have you start there and share just your whole thought process around why is it important to have gratitude and humility in your role.
Yeah, it's a great question. So why is gratitude and humility so key? And I would say, why is this so key to success as an advisor, and maybe more importantly, success as a human being? And this is nothing that I ever say is necessarily original. I just collect things and they bounce around in my brain, and then I just own them. So I'm a really good stealer of, I think, thoughts, and I have been for a long time. So when you think about the key to our business and the key to success and the key to winning clients and keeping clients, the most important thing is trust. It isn't smarts. It isn't, performance. It's trust. And then the question is, how do you, how do you create trust? How do you get people and attract people and get them to trust you? And I would argue that there's 3 things that are really key to trust. And the first, I think, is gratitude. I've been saying for years that one of the biggest problems successful advisors have is they start to buy their own bullshit. And so the problem with that is that nobody wants to be around some pompous ass, and I don't think we trust them either. So the reality is that you have to be, and you should be. I mean, and I am. And I think there's lots of other things that it benefits your life. But the first is, I'm so grateful. I don't think I deserve, the blessed life that I live. I don't think that I'm entitled to it. I think I earned it. I'm not embarrassed by it. I'm not ashamed of it. I earned it. But again, it's like there's a lot of people in the world that are way smarter, work just as hard or harder, and have way less. So I think having gratitude is so important, and being humble. I mean, just, I think people's natural inclination, there's a little bit of natural envy in all of us, I think. Um, and people can be naturally competitive. And if you want to work with people that are competitive, which we do because they tend to be successful, I don't think that we want to put in their face how awesome we are and how rich we are and all the things we have. And like, I never understand, like, I'm not really on Facebook. I think someone here put some stuff out, but I don't put stuff out there that is anything above normal. I'm not trying to impress people. And again, if you're 24 years old or 23 years old and you listen to one of my old talks, and it'll say, hey, you got to fake it before you make it. And I still believe that. But there's a difference between giving people the confidence that you're not, broke and unsuccessful, but you don't have to, portray something that's totally different. And then the last thing I think that goes with that is empathy. We have to be empathetic. We have to be empathetic to our clients, to our friends, to our families. No, I mean, if you are truly grateful, then that means you recognize how blessed and fortunate you are. Well, you also have to recognize that everybody else in the world isn't necessarily as fortunate or blessed. And if you just walk by all these people every day and you're saying things and showing things, to me, it's like, first of all, you're missing something. And second, I just don't think it's a way to have a successful life, and it's not a way to build a successful business. So, that's kind of how I look at it. Not to be a better person. I'm not telling people that I'm a better person or how you should be a better person. I think it impacts our success. It really does. It absolutely has an impact on our success.
So gratitude, humility, empathy,
Empathy.
and you said that those will create trust. I know you well enough to know that there's a high degree of authenticity. I mean, again, you don't believe your own bullshit. You don't, I mean, just the level of authenticity. Can you speak about that? And I know that I'm not asking you to brag on yourself. I mean, but
Right.
but authenticity, because a lot of people will hear this and they'll go to the fake it till you make it, or they, oh, this is a strategy that, okay, if I act grateful and act humble and act empathetic, well, then people are going to trust me. That's not what you're saying here.
No, listen, I mean, you're my coach. So we work on this together. And you gave me this gift years ago. I wake up every morning with the same initial thought: how lucky am I? I went to the gym this morning. I did not have to go to the gym this morning. I got to go to the gym this morning. I think that way. Like, I wake up, nothing hurts bad, everything hurts. Nothing hurts bad. Nothing hurts more than is going to prevent me to go to the gym. I'm not sick, God forbid. And my first thought is how lucky and blessed I am. I mean, because we all are to a certain extent. And so, no, it's not a strategy. It's the way to live your life. But I think also, when you think about, authenticity, part of authenticity is to do what you say you're going to do. I'm a really tough guy to work for. When we make a commitment to a client and we don't do it, and it doesn't have to be a big commitment. It could just be, hey, we'll send you these documents when we're done. We'll send you a copy of our proposal when we're done, or the review when we're done. And if the client 2 days later says, hey, I never got a copy of that, that really, really bugs me, because we have to do what we say we're going to do. Because if we don't, then how can people trust us? They have to know, that we are 100%, and we stand behind everything that we say. And if something goes wrong, and it was our fault, we pay for it, because that's the way it has to be, you know? And so anyway, but yeah, I think, I think if you can wake up every day and you can say to yourself, how lucky am I? How grateful am I for my life, no matter what's going on in your life? It's really, really difficult to have a really, really bad day. If you wake up in the morning and you think about and listen, we all have stresses, we all have issues. I was up at 4 this morning thinking about like 3 or 4 things that we're working on, and I had difficulty going back to sleep. I mean, I'm not sad about it. I'm just thinking about it. I'm just working on it. I'm just, maybe more excited than anything. But with that said, if I woke up in the morning and I thought about all of the things that were wrong in my life, I just don't think I'm going to go to work in the right mindset. I don't think I'm going to be the person that people want to be around. And I don't know whether we said this in a coaching session, Chuck, or maybe in one of our podcasts, but, you know, remember that you want people to want to be around you. Really, really important. You don't want to be some braggadocious, arrogant asshole, because if clients don't want to meet with you, it's very difficult to get referrals. It's very difficult to get more money from them. It might even be very difficult to keep them. And so again, like a client said to me yesterday, we've been working together for a long time. And she said, you're always so positive. Yeah, I hope so. And I hope you are, because nobody wants to get on the phone with someone that isn't positive, or nobody wants to be on a Zoom call or be in a meeting or have lunch with someone that isn't positive. And sometimes, you have to coach yourself into it. Sometimes you have to pick yourself up and say, okay, I have some challenges today. This isn't going well. Markets are going down. I lost a big client or whatever, but you have to get past it. And you have to coach yourself back to what's important. And we've got to present ourselves. When we get in front of clients, we have to show up as someone that they want to spend time with, someone that they feel like, yeah, that's my advisor, and I always enjoy my conversation. They should always feel better after they talk to you. They should never feel worse. And I'm sure for a lot of you, and the ones that are successful, I'm just telling you something that you already know. and you already do, but I think it's really, really important.
Well, I think it's a great reminder, and again, it's a lot of people have heard this. Maybe most people have heard it. What I like to focus in on from that standpoint is when we wake up and we're feeling fear or worry or stressed out about something, that's kicking our brain into that fight or flight mode. And so our brain is releasing the chemicals of dopa, or rather norepinephrine, cortisol, and adrenaline. And that's shutting the thinking part of the brain off. It's turning unhealthy genes on, is turning healthy genes off. When you wake up, as you just described, and look, maybe as you mentioned, maybe you have to look for something. What am I grateful for today? What could I be grateful for today? But as soon as you tap into that energy of gratitude, your brain all of a sudden shifts to releasing dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, and you're having a completely different day. You're taking charge of your chemistry. You're taking charge of your biology. You're acting like your own pharmacist, and you're creating those healthy chemicals that's going to cascade throughout your entire being and have an amazing day. And all of a sudden, then you become that magnetic human being that you just described, that people want to be around. Your energy's uplifting others. It's so important. It's just so important.
And I would say, and it's not this fake, like, oh, how's everything awesome? Everything's awesome. Like that's not me, that's not me. But it's and I want to say something else too. It's normal, it's natural, it's fine to have fear. It's fine to have a bad day. It's fine to have something that kind of knocks you off your bike. That's okay. But here's what I would say. It's okay for about 2 minutes. So something bad happens, you get a bad call, you didn't get the case, client fires you. You know, I got one out of the blue last week. New husband, whatever, combining, and I'm the loser of the deal, and I was shocked. I mean, it literally it knocked the wind out of me, and it knocked the wind out of me for about 3 minutes, which is probably about 2 minutes longer than it should have, because it really doesn't matter anyway. But then I have mechanisms. Everybody needs their own mechanisms. I don't want to tell you what those mechanisms should be for you, but I know what they are for me. I immediately go back to the videotape of how grateful and blessed I am. And I have certain things I think about whenever I'm not feeling the way I should. So it's natural. We all do it. And listen, sometimes I might go into a 1 minute, sort of negative thought process, 3 times in a day, depending on what's going on. But the key to, I think, success and healthy and is knowing when you're there, and then knowing how to get yourself out of it. That's the key. And if you don't, give Chuck a call. He'll help you. He'll give you some help on that.
Y it's what you just described is what I like to call the neon flashing signs. We've gotta have that story. We've gotta have that belief. We've gotta have that, maybe it's a mantra or a vision that we can turn to, that takes our mind away from that negative and turns it over to that positive and just keep running with it. So that's a great reminder, Andy. Let's pivot for a minute, and let's go to another conversation that you had 2 weeks ago in that session, and you were talking about we've got a couple of young guys in this group, and you were talking about how you would, if you were in their shoes, you would talk to them about, with their older clients, talk about taking you the whole way. So I love that. Give us just some insights on that as it relates to young advisors. This is a good moment to pause and share something that we've been building. It's called the Playbook for Wealth Advisors. If you've built a successful practice, but you still feel like too much runs through you, then this is for you. The playbook is the framework behind many of the conversations we have on this podcast: how to think like an owner, create real leverage, and grow without sacrificing your time, energy, or relationships. Most advisors don't need more ideas. They need a clear way to structure what they already know. And that's what the playbook provides. You can learn more at epicsuccess.com/playbook. Let's get back to the conversation.
So for young advisors, I think the question for young advisors, hey, I'm 24 years old, I'm 25 years old. Why would an older person, successful person, work with me because I'm too young? And what I say to them is that your unique advantage when you're like 30 years old or 28 years old or even younger, really you have two unique advantages. One, no matter how little you know way more than they know. So don't be so insecure, for sure. You might have to fake it a little bit before you make it again. But don't be so insecure because you do know way more. It doesn't matter how successful they are. They may not know anything about finance. They're busy. They know their businesses. So that's the first thought. Don't be afraid because you do know more and you have resources. So use your resources. But here's your advantage. Your advantage is that you can take them all the way. And not only can you take them all the way, but what you should be saying to them is, Chuck, you want to work with me, and maybe Chuck is 60 and I'm 30. But Chuck, you want to work with me because one, I have the resources. And so I know I'm only 8 years in the business or 10 and, whatever. They don't have to know you're 30. You can pretend you're 33, 12, whatever. No one's checking your resume. But, um, but I can not only take you to the finish line, but I can take care of your children. And so that to me is a huge advantage. And then I want to turn this upside down now. And if you're 60, you're 58, you're 65, and you're listening to this, and you're talking to clients and you're talking to prospects, you, I always have a very, very smart young 30 something on every Zoom call with me. Because if they're not saying it to you, they're thinking it. And they're thinking a couple of things. One, you're 60, presumably you're successful. One thing they might be thinking is, how long are you going to do this? Because I know you're successful and you don't have to work till you're 80. And then the second thing is, what if something happens to you? And who's going to take care of me and maybe my family? So I have that 30 something, with me because that's her job. And if anybody, when I introduce her, I always talk about how much smarter she is than me, which is quite frankly true. Um, I'm still a little bit more experienced and, I listen better, but we're getting better. So I mean, it's a process, she's getting good training. But at the end of the day, I explained to them that she's here because I not only want to get you to the finish line, but I want to make sure that we can take care of your children. And so if you're 60 and you're finding that you're having difficulty growing your business, one of the reasons that you might be having difficulty growing that is your clients might love you, but if you don't have somebody else with you, call it a second seat or whatever you want to call it, a partner that's younger, much younger, that might be holding you back. And so I would say it goes both ways. And then what happens, you can let these young, and again, we've talked about this in the past, Chuck. If I've got a client that's over 65 and it's a file, a client that I would not want to lose, I have their children. I have their children. Now, I don't want to talk to a 32-year-old about their $200,000 account particularly. I don't even want to talk to them about their $1 million account, but I want the count. And that's her role. And that's another one of my advisors' role on my team is that they talk to the kids, but we have the kids because someday the kids are going to have the money and it creates value for your practice. If you are ever thinking about what's the long-term value of your practice, that's part of it. Because somebody might say, well, I'd like to buy your practice, but the average age of your clients are 75, so I'm going to discount you dramatically. And you could say, yeah, that's fine, but let me show you some data. And the data is that 80% of those people I have their children as clients. So there is no risk because one might become three, but we have the kids. Just something that I think is really, really, important because I don't think people necessarily, it's very hard when you get older nobody wants to face it. We advisors don't want to face that. No advisor wants to face the idea that somebody might think that you're too old, that they don't want to work with you because you're too old. I mean, that's like, ow, that hurts. And it's hard enough to recognize, I'm tired of looking in the mirror. Like, what is that? What are these wrinkles? What's the thing on my, I mean, I'm tired of it. And so, you have to acknowledge it, and you have to make yourself desirable, for those clients, especially those new clients. So I just think it's something, if you're not thinking about it, you better give it some thought.
So for the younger advisors, their competitive advantage is I can take you the whole way. And what I heard you saying in essence was, you might not have the experience, but you've got access to the knowledge. And so anytime you get that question, it's, I don't know, but I can find out. So
Sure.
lean on those resources. And then for the guys, I guess, that are closer to your age and my age, closing in on that, they've got to have that younger person or they risk losing a large segment of their clientele.
No doubt. I mean, yeah, no doubt.
Let's talk about that just a little bit. So for the guy or lady that hasn't hired that lead advisor, that second chair, or that service advisor, what would they be thinking about when they do that? I mean, what are the steps? What are the thought processes doing that? How do they get people over to them? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, so how do you attract a really high quality lead advisor, junior partner, however you want to describe these people? I mean, opportunity, is the greatest way to attract talent. So, we have to be, we know what's in it for us. It's leverage, it's getting time back, it's protecting our base, it's giving us an opportunity to, compete, more effectively in the marketplace with either younger clients or even older clients that just want someone that can take them to the finish line. So there's all kinds of reasons that work for us. But the question always has to be answered is what's in it for them? So it's got to be something that's fair and compelling. What I would say though is protect your book. So when you bring somebody in, make sure that you have very, very strong legal agreements. Like, look, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to deny anybody a chance to make a living. If somebody ever works here and they don't want to work anymore, I mean, we wish them the absolute best, but you're not taking my clients. You know, you go compete, go do whatever. But my clients are my clients, and if they do take them, they have to buy them and make sure that you've got an agreement, a document that protects that. But with that said, there's got to be a compelling growth, opportunity for them. So we like to track things like net new. If we have net new, like I get a net new bonus, I give my net new bonus away. I give it to the team because I don't need it, and I think that's just a great way to incentivize them and give them an opportunity. And eventually, when you think about for the next gens, what a massive opportunity for them because you've got the average age of the average advisor now. I don't know, are we 60? Are we 65? I know the number is really very, very high. It's very difficult to come into this business today and compete the way we did when we were 22 years old. It's gotten really complicated. It's hard. It's not impossible. It's just difficult. But there's going to be a massive, massive amount of business that's going to have to be turned over. And so we're always looking for good, next gen talent, because we've got a bunch of, 60 somethings, in our $18 billion book of business. But yeah, so I think that the most important thing is that we have to get away from what's in it for me.
Right,
We
right.
have to be thinking what's in it for them. And I think anybody that works for you, I mean, if we don't really lose employees. I mean, I've got, Paul's been my chief of staff for 25 years, maybe longer. Kim sits outside. She's been with me for 25 years, probably. Danny's been with me for 20 years. I mean, most of our people, if they haven't been here for 10 years or more, just because they're only 30 years old and they've been here their whole professional career. At the end of the day, though, the reason for that isn't because I'm such a great guy to work for, because this place is busy, and we are running around and it's a lot of pressure. But I love them because I can't do this without them, and they're good people, and I think they like me, and I take very good care of them, because who cares how much money I make, and even though nobody knows exactly what's going on, everybody has a general idea, so you better make sure that you're being really fair and that these people are being incentivized because the most corrosive and destructive thing for your business is turnover, and we have this conversation all the time. I just lost somebody, I got to find somebody, I'm doing work now that I shouldn't be doing. It's unproductive and I'm going to have a really bad quarter or a really bad 6 months or even a really bad year. And to me, that's just ridiculous. That is so unnecessary. You want to find good quality people. And if you find them, then you want to make sure that you keep them. And that's by, being generous with them. All
Right.
of our people, I think, are make way more money than the average, in the space, but that's okay, because we always say it's not about expenses, about revenue.
So take the advisor that's got 4, 5, 6, maybe 8 or 900 clients. They don't have that person. They want to hire that person. I know a lot of people would think, well, let me look around my organization and maybe there's someone that's been around for a few years in the advisor role. They're not really doing that well, so that would be an option. What I mean, just what's what are you what advice would you give to that person that's got hundreds of clients?
Yeah.
They haven't hired that second chair yet.
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, you have to. You can't have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients and be by yourself and be talking to all those people. Because at the end of the day, it's not fair to them. Even if you like to really work all the time, but it really isn't fair to them because there's no way that the bottom half of that, client base is going to be getting what they deserve to get. Because remember, if you're their advisor, no one else is. So no one else is helping them. And everybody deserves the best, that they can get. So, and it's a great opportunity for the younger advisor, and they find money because they engage. Think about when if you have hundreds of clients and you're talking to and I hate to call anyone a C client, but let's just say you've segmented them and they're a bronze client, not a gold client or whatever your max client is. Well, everybody knows the idea of segmentation is we spend more time with the top 20%. We spend very little time with the bottom 20%. Well, I get it, and that's smart business-wise, and every coach will tell you the same, but, they deserve to be cared for as well. The reality is we spend very little time with them, but those people, there typically can be stuff going on in those files. I find that these Gen 2s will pay for themselves if they're good and if they're asking questions, because there is money. People inherit money, things happen, things get sold, people retire, 401k monies roll out. And so, I would say that it's great to find somebody within your organization. They're plugged into your system. There's nothing wrong with advertising, for those positions. I mean, there's lots of people out there that have very, very small practices and can't make a living, but they could be very good, advisors. They could be very good planners. And, and just, I'd put it out there. Yeah, I would just put it out there.
And okay, so they find the person. I know a lot of people wonder, well, how do I
Yeah.
compensate
How do you,
them?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Talk
Yeah.
to us a little bit about
Yeah. There's,
compensation.
yeah, there's lots of ways. I mean, look, you always have to back into compensation. The first thing is you have to start with, okay, what is a reasonable, attractive, positive comp for this person? Look, I have a very big book. So we could say, I give them this percentage of the book I give them, but your percentage would have to be higher. So there's no magical percentage. What I always do first is, okay, when I get started, what do I want to start with? So if I want that person to make 200 grand, let's say, and I'm going to give them 200, million dollars of assets to work, then I say, okay, I'm going to give you this percent, 10%, let's say if it's $2 million, 10% is going to be your base. And then what I'm going to do though, is I'm going to give you a bonus on net new. And it's net new, not new, net new. Because if they lose money, that's got to go against, the money that we pick up. And then the net new could be a one-time, bonus, but it might be 40%, might be 50%. It could be a real number because I want to motivate them and they should win. If they bring money into the house and they grow our revenue, then they should benefit from that. So, but somebody might have to get 20% depending on how much they're running. But I always start with work backwards. Where are you trying to get to that this is a good opportunity for them financially? And then try to from there figure out based on growth, how can they make more? And that's how I look at it. So I don't think there's a magic formula, but I think that a percentage of the base they run is a good idea because we want them to be incentivized to keep it. In a straight salary, if there's no downside to losing clients, that's not great. So they're incentivized to keep it because it's a percentage of the base we gave them, and then a bigger, say, one-time bonus every year on their growth. And if they're doing a really great job, the base is growing. If they're bringing in money, then their comp's growing, their bonuses. I mean, people should be able to make really good money that way. That's kind of that's how we do it anyway.
Okay, so I heard one potential mistake is compensating them on the not the net new that's brought in. It's got to be net new. What are some other mistakes or pitfalls that you've seen other advisors make? I know you guys look at a lot of practices, and you've probably seen some that, hey, this was a mistake. What are some of the mistakes to avoid as it relates to bringing in that second chair?
Yeah, I would say, look, don't get lazy as an advisor. It's very easy if you bring in a competent second chair or a couple that all of a sudden we sort of get completely disconnected from our business, and particularly clients that we really, want to, care about, bigger clients. So I would say try to stay connected. If I'm free and I'm not necessarily supposed to be on a call, but I'm free, I'm just here. Uh, I like to just be working. So if I have a break today and there's a 1 o'clock call and I have nothing scheduled and I haven't talked to these people in a year and a half, I'll jump on the call with my Gen 2. And I just say, hey guys, I just want to be able to jump on. It's, I haven't talked to you in a while and just touch base, see how you're doing. Just to kind of remind people, you know, whose business it is and that you're here. So I think when people get completely disconnected, then the problem they have is that someday you're going to probably negotiate with these people. This could be a whole podcast by itself. What we watch in the market, because we are out there acquiring practices, and it is amazing to me, is when I talk to a senior, the owner or the owners, and it's amazing to me how beneficial it would be for them to join us, but their Gen 2s might not be as interested, which I think is a mistake for them as well, because I think the biggest benefit in our acquisitions is the Gen 2s, because we create this opportunity to help them grow the business and keep the business and give them an opportunity to buy out without taking on debt. But that's a different story. But I'm amazed because what happens is I'm 68 years old. I'm the owner, I'm the boss, and I haven't really been very engaged in my business for the last 10 years. These Gen 2s clearly have the relationships, and now I'm going to negotiate with them. Does anybody think that they are in a negotiating position of strength under those circumstances? And I would argue no. And then what ends up happening is they become, even though they're not shareholders, and by the way, I built the business, you built the business. A lot of times these Gen 2s, they're good service advisors, but they didn't necessarily build it. They're making very, very good money, but now they also think they own the business, and it's like, well, in your mind, you might be thinking, well, I pay them and they're my clients. So, they're my clients. I want to sell the business to them someday. And that's why I watch all these advisors basically give these businesses away. They sell these businesses for a fraction of what they're worth. And so I would just say that make sure, if 20% of your clients are 80% of the revenue, don't fall in a trap that you're going to play golf 4 days a week, and you have what we call lifestyle practice, and you let everybody else do the work. I mean, it's great if that's your goal. I mean, everybody doesn't have to think about this the way I do, but there is a downside to that. And the downside is when you wake up someday and what you think is valuable might be a lot less valuable, because who are you negotiating with? And you don't even really have the ability to go outside and negotiate if these people aren't on board. Because I'm not going to buy a practice from a 68-year-old guy if their next generation people aren't interested. I'm not doing it because I'm not going to pay for that. And so, I would just, try not to completely lose connection and contact with your business. Don't get lazy.
So that's a big one, I know. What about the one where, and I've got clients that that they have Gen 2 that want a percentage, they want to buy in, or they want some ownership. What about that? I mean, what have you seen from that standpoint?
So the issue today is Gen 2's want ownership. Everybody wants ownership. Listen, every deal we do, it's about ownership, right? It's equity in our firm. So everybody wants a piece of the rock, and I get that. All I would say to the people that own these businesses is these businesses are valuable. If you all feel vulnerable, you can make a deal, but stop giving it away, because someday you're going to have a conversation with me after you've already given 40% of this away. And we're going to explain to you what we are willing to pay for this. And you are going to be sick to your stomach that you gave it away. So at least understand, what the value is. And, can you discount it? Yeah, you have to discount it, right? But just be careful about how much you give away, how much you sell way below market. I would just say, just be mindful, be mindful.
So, because a lot of people, a lot of advisors, they look at it as, I want to keep this person, I want to reward this person. Maybe they've got a 20 or 30-year runway ahead of them.
Yeah.
That's a long time to have a 10 or 15 or 20% part or 5% partner, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that I mean, look, everybody wants equity, obviously, but at the end of the day, I think if they're compensated based on the growth, that's one way to sort of, mitigate a lot of that. Because there's equity is one thing, money's the other. Money, I don't care about. You know, bonus them, share with them, give them 50% if they're that valuable to you, but not the equity, not the equity, because the equity is what you sell when you retire, and that's the asset that you've created over your career, and that's what really has value. So I think if you pay them really well and they make more money, than they can make anywhere else. And look, I say this, I gave 10% of my equity away to my team. It will be tens of millions of dollars. I gave that to them in what we call a management incentive plan because they've been with me for forever. And so I'm not saying that that I'm not. I don't think that I want to give equity or sell equity, and I didn't sell it to them. I gave it to them. But at the same time, though, I know what I gave away, though. I know what mine's going to be, and I know what I gave away. And for me, under that circumstance, it doesn't matter because I'm going to have to give it away to somebody else. I might as well give it away to people I love. You've got Chuck.
Well, and you did that in your 60s. You didn't do that in your 30s or 40s,
Correct,
right?
correct. And I did it. I did it after I had already known exactly how to value this, what it's worth, and what I was giving away. I didn't give away something for $1 million that's going to be worth $20 million. I knew what it was worth. And it's worth a lot, but I know what it is. I know what I'm giving away. I was a, I was a informed, you know, buyer, seller, giver awayer, but I knew exactly what I was giving away. And I just think that what we do is we operate out of fear of losing these people. I mean, we have these conversations with advisors all the time, and a lot of them feel like they're being held hostage by, these people. And I'll tell you the crazy thing. Forget about the Gen 2s. They're giving equity or selling equity to their operations people. Like, what? Pay them really well, pay them a bonus percentage. We do not have to give equity to operations people. But the problem is we're running around. We have so little understanding of this. And then we feel like we're being held hostage. And then all of a sudden, I'm talking to somebody who's got call it a COO, whatever that means, and a compliance person. And both of these people have equity. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. Pay them more or find somebody else, who can pay more.
Would you agree that most people that have fear of their team leaving or of one or two key people leaving, it's because they're underpaying them, because if they
I
were
would think,
paying them.
I would think, I would think, I mean, look, and again, I want to go back for a second. So something we did what we call our compass, our strategic compass. So third quarter, setting our goals. We reviewed second quarter, third quarter. One of the things that has not been announced yet, I want every employee at one point to have phantom equity. It was a little bit of a fight, but I typically win my fights. Oh, and again, because in my mind, and look, they'll have to be here when a recap happens. They can't come in for a year. It, but because in my mind, everybody on the team should win if there's a big win. Now, again, it's a big number, but it's a lot of people. But for me, it's maybe, I mean, I'm the biggest shareholder. Maybe it costs me, I don't know, 1% of my number, whatever it is. It's not, it does, but I know what it is. I can do the math. So I'm a big believer that everybody should have some skin. Everybody should benefit, but that could be phantom equity and bonus. I've operated with Paul Magistro for 25 years that way. Now he's a 7-figure income. So it's obviously worked. Now, because as I think about someday I won't be doing this, there's going to be a massive amount of value that he should benefit in that. And that's why I gave them equity. But at the end of the day, he was never going anywhere. I never even thought about this thing having value, but because he made a substantial amount of money, which he earned every bit of it. So to me, yeah, people are insecure because they can go somewhere else and work for maybe a nicer person and make more money. And I can't do anything about the nicer person part, but I can, at least make it difficult, because I pay them.
And this will be the last. I think the last question. This will be a great point to end on. But think about how much different, and would you share how much different you think your practice would be? Let's say that you paid people just kind of, hey, this was the going rate. You paid them that, and you had turnover, every 5 or 6 or 8 years, whatever it was. How much different do you think your business would look today
It
without?
would be, yeah. If I've experienced no turnover, if I had experienced turnover, maybe the average turnover, or if I had experienced, above average turnover, my business would be substantially smaller. I know it, because the one thing clients always say, Paul's great. Danny's great. Kim is so helpful. I love your team. I love your team. I don't ask for it. I don't say, hey, how are we doing? What do you think of Paul? What do you think of Danny? What do you think of the team? It's always the same. Your team is great. Everybody gets right back to me. Everybody's so nice. Everybody's so helpful. And I'm like, and then sometimes I say, well, they better be. That's their job. But yeah, no, but we love our team. That's why people refer you, right? That's what creates referable moments. People don't refer, people that are half-assed, that don't do what they say, that don't get it done, that they have to keep calling to ask for things. That's not who people refer to. They refer to organizations that they feel like they get great service from, that they trust, and our services they get from us, they don't get from anyone else. My guys are answering emails on the weekends because we're all kind of connected. And because I'll answer emails on the weekends, and I see that I might answer an email. Paul's already answered the email, or Danny's already commented. He's already answered the email to the client. And so again, it would be dramatically different. And I'm grateful to them. And that's why someday everybody is going to win big, as they should. Yeah. So I don't want the message to be the wrong message. We want to share the success. You know, we want to reward our people. I've always done that. Just understand what you're giving away or what you're selling and at what price. And again, and who you're selling it to. And who do we make partners? I mean, actual equity partners, or who do we share revenue with? Because we want to share revenue with everybody, but we should not be making everybody equity partners necessarily. So I would just say, just think it through, extrapolate it out, and ask yourself, what is this thing going to be worth someday? Is this my intention? Am I going to feel good about this, you know, in 20 years? And if so, then great. I love the idea of sharing. I think sharing's great.
So be very generous, which I know you've been very generous with your team always, but don't give away control is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. Be generous. Don't give away control. And if you're giving away equity, understand what that equity is. Understand what its value is today. Understand what its value is going to be later. And understand it's one thing to have valued employees that you care for and take care of, and you're flexible with, and you overpay, and that's great, and you share. It's another thing to be giving equity, because equity is something, I mean, it seems like it's almost unique to our space. You go out into the world, everybody doesn't just get equity. Walk into their boss office, hey, I'm doing a really good job. You go, yeah, I pay you for that, by the way. Yeah. Why wouldn't equity? Well, okay, we don't do that, but we do. It seems like our little cottage industry and all our little franchises, and we tend to do that because we're afraid if we don't, they're going to leave. Do what you want to do, but just be aware of what you're doing. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great place for us to end episode 10 here. So everyone, thanks for joining us on the Advisor's Compass. If today's conversation gave you clarity, or if it sparked a new idea, we'd love for you to subscribe so you never miss what's next. And if you'd like, share with another advisor who would also benefit from this conversation, because when we're able to grow faster, scale smarter, and build what lasts, you're able to create clarity every step of the way. Andy, it's always a pleasure. Great seeing you.
Great seeing
See
you
you
too,
all
Chuck.
next time.
Talk to you soon.
Talk soon. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.
Herein referred to as One Point BFG. One Point BFG is not affiliated with Advisor Compass. Chuck Downs is not affiliated with One Point BFG, nor compensated by One Point BFG. The opinions expressed by Andy Schwartz are my own personal views and experiences as an investment advisor representative. The information contained herein is provided for informational and discussion purposes only and is not and may not be relied on in any manner as legal, tax, accounting, or regulatory advice, nor does it constitute an offer to sell or solicitation of an offer to buy any securities and may not be used or relied upon in connection with any offer or sale of securities. The information, as set forth herein, should not be construed or interpreted as One Point BFG's guarantee of any particular investment outcome or a guarantee of future investment returns or results.